So this is a story about a haunted house. After the theater closed in Denver, I decided I was going to move back to California, only I didn't have a place to live, and it was still that wonderful recession was going on. And I knew a friend who had a friend who was a chiropractor and also a physical therapist, and she had a room for rent in a very nice sort of area in northern San Diego. So I went there. I sent her a check, and I arrived about a month later with my dog, and I moved in. It was a nice, spacious room with a bath. She was an English woman, and she had been living there for a number of years, living in the States. She'd only had the house about 4 years, for which she had paid an unbelievable amount of money, and now the house was worth half of what she paid for it, and of course her mortgage was still what it was. So that's one of the reasons she wanted to have a housemate. She lived there with her grown son who was going to college, or I don't quite remember what it was about, but anyway, and 2 dogs. Soon after I moved in, I began to think about the house. There was something about it that I went, I think I know who used to own this house. And she was kind of someone who was a little bit strange. And so I asked the new owner, I said, who used to own this house? Who did you buy this house from? She said, oh, I bought this from so-and-so who died. And she said her name, and I realized, because I had lived in that town a bunch of years ago, that I knew that woman, and that we had gone to the same spiritual center, and that she had had a terrible bunch of illnesses, and on top of that, well, I don't want to say she wasn't the friendliest person, but and you didn't walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. She probably had plenty of reason, but she did work as a volunteer for this spiritual center that we both attended, and one of her jobs was selling script, which is a sort of weird little thing that you sell. They're like coupons, and you use them at the store, and then the store gives the spiritual center a percentage of what you've spent. And she had had a disfiguring cancer, and it was rather difficult to look at her. This cancer had, in fact, caused her to have many surgeries, and one had, I hate to say this, but it's the horrible truth, removed her nose. Okay? And they had put a flap of skin on her face to cover the hole, and I presume that eventually they were going to shape that into a nose. But it was very difficult. And the interesting thing about her was that she was very upfront, pardon the expression about it, and that she was right there in the hallway when you came in on Sunday mornings. And it was really a spiritual test of, could you see the soul in her? I'll be honest, I couldn't. All right? I'll be honest. I could not see that. I could just see that it was very hard to look at. It was very hard. Really. I understand that's a character defect in me, and I confess it now. And I regret this part of me. I really wish that I was like Mother Teresa, but I'm not. Moving on. The story. Apparently, she also had it in for me now that I was living in her house, because very, very soon I would be working on my computer, and I would feel a tap on my leg, and I would look down thinking it was my dog, and there'd be nothing there. Oh, God. And I knew it. I knew it was her. One day I was going to go away with some friends, and I was actively looking, by the way, to get out of that house. Once I knew, I said, I've got to get out of here. And I was packing up to go away for a weekend with some friends, and I felt a tapping on my back, and I knew it was this woman, and I said, what is it? What is it? And I heard distinctly, in that sort of vague, ethereal way, when are you leaving? And I said, as soon as possible, don't worry. I'm working on it. I won't be here long. And I packed up for the weekend, and I went off with my friends. And when I came back, having told them this story, and they all, of course, thought there was no such thing as ghosts. And Carol is always making up these things. She's so colorful. I was alone in the house with the 2 dogs that belonged to the new owner of this house, one of who was very aggressive when it came to food. In fact, he was dachshund, a wiener dog, very, very fat, and we used to have to hide food from him because he would get into the cabinet. So I was eating dinner, and I finished dinner, and I picked up my plate to put it in the sink or whatever I was going to do with it, and corn cob fell off of it, and the dog rushed like a shark to grab that corn cob, and I thought, and then I thought, oh my goodness, it's not my dog. What if something happens to that dog? So I bent over to grab the corn cob away from the dog, and as I did, I slipped on a tile floor and fell, boom, backwards on my back so hard that I thought, don't move. Do not move any part of your body, because I did not want to know what was broken. And from the bedroom, I heard a woman's laughter, the laughter of the woman who owned the house previously. And I knew in that moment that I had to move out. And so I sat up, and thank God nothing was broken. I'm so grateful. Although I did have a serious back injury that required me wearing a brace for a support for the next 6 months. When the owner came back, I said, your house is haunted and I have to leave. She was not happy, but I was. That is my haunted house story. I'm very glad I survived, and I apologize to anybody who's been offended by this. I'll see you soon.